Hello, my name is Chase, and this is Philosotalks. Ever since, college, when I kind of started looking into all of the world religions and all of the differences they have, the similarities, after being raised in the Christian tradition and then being exposed to all these world religions, they were always so interesting to me. And it brought up the question of how do you know that your religion is the right one? And when you think about that, I think you start to realize that your spirituality is totally subjective and your religion is based on where you were born and who your parents were. And then I wasn't satisfied there, so I kept studying more and more and just never really have ever stopped or stopped being interested. So I've, recently gotten back into studying a lot of the ancient spiritualities. There's a great book that I've been listening to on Audible called The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. And it really goes super far back into prehistory. We think of almost the totality of human history being the last 3,000 or 4,000 years because that's all we have the written record of. But some scientists and philosophers and just intellects have noticed that humans have been around for, at least 100,000 years or so. And, we've evolved from our previous ancestors for millions of years. And they've found skulls of early humans that closely resemble our skulls from as far back as 150,000 years ago. And when you think about how long 150,000 years is and how long 3,000 years is, it's like we only have 1% of the total human history story. The only record we have of anything earlier than that is in the legends and myths that were passed down and that were finally written down about 3,000 or 4,000 years ago when the earliest civilizations created written language. And, it's possible that there was written language before that it was destroyed. We know that a lot of written history has been destroyed. The various conquests of nations, the burning down of libraries, when one nation conquers another, they often will burn down any and all traces of their conquered nation. And of course, for the last 2,000 years, there has been one religion that has just sought to dominate the world scene and has done so very successfully in the West, and that is Christianity. So in its rise to the top, ever since a couple hundred years after Jesus, they created a hierarchy that was very good at simplifying their philosophy into one book, simplifying their gods into one god, coming up with one main, point, and disseminating it throughout the whole world. And you can't fault them for being very good at what they do, but it's actually a very left brain approach to human spirituality. The idea that we need to make it simple, direct, to the point. It's easy to digest, but it lacks the complexity that human spirituality actually has. And it also lacks the interest in growing and evolving. One of the interesting things that you find when you go back before Jesus in history, there are myths and legends about a savior who was the Lamb of God, who died, was buried, and came back from the dead after 3 days. There were legends of gods before Jesus that had a similar story, and what some historians believe is that, as I said, nations conquer nations. They learn about the religion of that nation and they kind of bring their spirituality into this conquered land, and the locals have their own previous stories that they meld together, and there's a lot of melding of the cultures. The world is a big place, but it's not too big. Even before cars and planes, people traveled far distances from Europe to Asia, Middle East to Africa, a lot of blending of cultures, and all of the religions from Christianity, Judaism, Islam, those three are all have to do with each other. They're the Abrahamic religions, but even the Eastern religions of Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, there's a lot of similarities and there's a lot of crossover. Some even have said that some of the early Jewish mystics probably traveled to the Far East, learned from some of the Eastern philosophers, some of the Buddhist philosophies, and brought back some of that wisdom. And of course, Egypt, being one of the oldest civilizations that we have any written history of, has some of the oldest spiritual writings and what they called mystery schools. And they're called mystery schools because when we're born into this world, we have instincts and we have our, what some might say, like memories of a past life or something, but we are largely put into a world that we know nothing about. And to learn about the mystery of the reality that we live in, to awaken to what we truly know deep down, is something that humans have always had a longing for. And in ancient Egypt, they had these mystery schools where the priests or wise philosophers would pass down their wisdom and their teachings to the younger candidates who were initiates into the mystery schools. And this tradition has been passed along throughout history all the way up to 16th century, 17th century, and it's almost kind of gone away now, although we do have academia and just a different world now. But the mystery schools that were in Egypt and in Greece, so interesting to see and look back on some of those ancient teachings that were what we call occult. And occult is a strange word. Most people wince at the word occult, even though all it means is hidden. So hidden knowledge is occult knowledge. And the only reason it's hidden is because not many people go looking for it. We get very entrapped in the material world, and we can forget about our spiritual higher selves very easily, especially when survival comes first. But those who have been initiated into these mystery schools and who have written down their wisdom, there is amazing books. And as I said, I've been listening to The Secret Teachings of All Ages. It talks about the Hermetic teachings. And Hermetic school of thought comes from an ancient legend, a man named Hermes Trismegistus. And this man may or may not have been a real person, more than likely an amalgamation of stories being passed down generation to generation. And some may say that he has written 20,000 books. Of course, that'd be a lot of books for one person, but they're all attributed to one man because it's of this one tradition. And the Hermetic tradition was passed down into the Masonic Freemasonry. And these societies of the Freemasons, they kept the tradition going of teaching the young initiates into their society all of the occult wisdom that has been passed down. And they say that this wisdom is only for those who are ready for it. Not everyone can, be ready for it. But if you're watching this video and if you're interested in this sort of thing, then you may be on a spiritual journey of your own. And like many of us in today's world, I feel like there is an awakening to all that there is available to us. Our current age is called the Age of Aquarius, and Aquarius is the water bearer, and he's often depicted as pouring out water. And some of the religious teachers say that this outpouring of water is like the outpouring of information of our current age. Every age is coinciding with the constellations, the 12 constellations, which is called the precession of the equinoxes. So every 2,150 years is approximate measure of one age. And for the past 2,000 years, the world has been in the age of Pisces. And Pisces is the fish, and Jesus is called the fisher of men. So for the past 2,000 years, there has been this one theme, and that is, the rise of science, of reason, of, or logic. And it's a very kind of left brain, male driven age. And what we're coming into right now is the age of Aquarius. And with the outpouring of information, some call it the information age. And with all of this information, I feel like many young people around the world are coming to the realization that all of the religions of the world have one perennial philosophy. The Perennial Philosophy is a book by Aldous Huxley. Highly recommend. He looks at all the religions of the world, and he looks at what is the underlying philosophy that they have in common. And as I said, there's a lot of intermingling between the cultures in the ancient world and in the world today more than ever. We've become a global society, a global economy. And so there's so much intermingling now that the borders between the religions have become foggy. And those who are interested in studying philosophy of religion are learning more from all of the world religions than they ever could have from just one. You know, it's a big world, it's a big picture, and the universe is bigger than we could ever imagine. The universe is we are probably incapable of truly grasping what's really going on here. But some of these ancient teachings that have been passed down give us these poetic, allegorical stories that tell the story, the bigger picture. And one of the oldest Hermetic axioms is as above, so below. And what that means is we can, through our own small life called the microcosm, draw an analogy of the bigger world, the macrocosm. And by understanding ourselves, we can understand God, because we are all connected to the divine spirit that is the true essence of the universe. It just blows my mind to think about how we not only have a physical body, but we also have a spirit. And this duality was thought to be two separate things, but they're intermingled. And we have a spirit because we have a body, and we have a mind because we have a body. And our body has evolved past the point of most animals to have a mind that is capable of understanding itself, our culture, our world. Our understanding is growing and evolving. And some of these mystery schools realize this. Human nature is to evolve. And the theory of evolution by Charles Darwin is far from complete. It is almost too simplistic, just like one religion is too simplistic. One man's theory is too simple to describe the complexity of human evolution or of human spirituality. So when Charles Darwin said that natural selection is all that evolution is, scientists have taken that and run with it. And they just think that's the truth, that we're only here through natural selection. Well, consciousness would not have arisen from bacteria through just survival and natural selection. There is a underlying force that scientists have not discovered that is the life force, or the chi, or the prana, or the spirit. This spirit has a force of bringing things together in a way that is beautiful and purposeful. And the only reason that we have evolved in the way that we have is because it was planned in the mind of God. You see, there are some that say the universal mind is the mind of God, and that mind came before matter. The general scientific consensus right now is that matter evolved and developed a mind, but it's backwards. Mind is what forced the evolution of matter. Mind is what forces the evolution of matter. You see, there's this theory of panpsychism or pantheism, and that is the idea that the mind of God inhabits all of physical reality and possibly even beyond physical reality. It's the idea that God is the whole universe and maybe even bigger than the universe.